unmute myself. I'm gonna unmute guess one, and I guess I can go ahead and unmute Jimmy because his source won't be on scene to start, right? That I would think that's how that works since it's not in the mixer. Okay, let's try it. We'll find out. I mean, there's only one way to test this if Jimmy just starts talking while we're in this view. Oh no, here we go.
Thing already.
Here we are. Look at look at this. Look at this. What is the chat is over here, and we're surrounded by sparkly background things.
I know. And apparently we weren't muted during the the starting
I just
thing.
unmuted us.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. All right.
Thankfully.
Yeah, that does look pretty cool.
We'll find out. Yeah, look at us looking like streamers and whatnots. By the way, how are levels? Oh, so if you're on the Streamlabs link, yeah, it automatically sent that out with a tweet. Then you can't hear anything. That might be a weird Streamlabs thing, but what I can do is get the link and I will post it in the chat. We're still figuring this thing out.
So Estella can hear our dulcet tones.
Yep. For people that can hear us, let us know about levels, because we finally figured out levels in the old setup, and here we are starting from scratch again.
But we do that all the time, every single time. Like test 1, 2.
Actually, has anybody acknowledged they can hear us at all? Okay, cool. Thank you, David. David says he can hear us. Cool.
Sounds great level-wise. Yep.
All right. So yeah, welcome to this new layout. Well, I only had I do have a little bit more time on my hands these days. Refer back to the last episode for more information.
Except that now you've taken up all that time working on this project that we're on.
Yes. Hold on. The Flutter, the Android and iOS Flutter mobile app that embeds Unity as a library and downloads multiple experiences, both AR and non-AR, in one session over the internet using asset bundles. Works. It all works. I got it working yesterday. So I did not work today, and instead I worked on our streaming setup, and then I'm going to work on our website eventually too, because I need to get.
And I'm going to make a cool video for our background.
Yeah, but guys, we're being super rude. We have a guest, and so one thing we carried over from our little setup is our reveal of our guest. So. Are you guys ready? Let me make sure you're not muted.
I think
you're not muted. There we go. Did it work?
There he is. Oh, interesting.
It's me.
It's Jimmy. It's Jimmy.
Yeah. To be honest, I expected a lot more fanfare than what just.
Well, thanks for having me without the fan. It's okay. We can get these. We can get Spencer in the backyard with a cell. I'll take. I'll take.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Spencer's got the sail up. Spencer's going to try to sit still this entire run, right?
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Look, even our guests know at this point. Oh, we got echoes. Hold on. We got echoes.
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 Jimmy.
I wonder if
it could be.
Oh, you know what it is? I think both. See if that fixes it, chat.
Let's have that. Check that again.
Yeah,
maybe.
It looks like both the Skype audios get multiplexed into one channel.
Still going.
Gotcha.
See, I hit levels when Jimmy talks. On guess one.
Okay.
So hopefully that fixed it.
You try to take my desktop audio down. Any better?
No, I think you're good.
Okay.
Oh, Spencer's echoing too. Oh, maybe it's. I wonder if.
Am I echoing?
It might be mixing everything into actually let me mute desktop audio. That I'm not showing levels on desktop audio though. Welcome to Oh, sounds better. Sounds better. Yeah.
Audio chat.
Plus the chat lags by a few seconds, so I gotta wait. Okay, great. Well, so now we know. Now we know all the Skype multiplexes onto audio multiplexes onto one channel. I could probably fix that one of these days. Wait.
We believe in you, Paul.
Thanks. Yeah. What else have I got to do? Okay, so James was there. So wait. So now everyone can hear James because I'm about to have him saying
good. Check.
Yeah, sounds like and Spencer.
Awesome.
Josh thinks I'm fine, which is I thank you, Josh. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Screenshot that one.
So anyway,
hey,
hi Jimmy.
Yeah,
sorry, a little technical.
So Spencer asked me to come do it. He hit me up and said, "Hey, you've got all these crazy things going on in Atlanta. Come talk to me about XR." But we go back, I guess, a couple of years in Vancouver at SIGGRAPH, which is like hopefully not a thing of the past now, right?
Oh man, I know.
I am all for the virtual conference. As someone that missed out on a whole bunch of stuff living on the East Coast, and then now living on the West Coast and not really wanting to travel to those things, I'm all for the virtual conference. If I would SIGGRAPH. I don't. It's
the SIGGRAPH is not like
you're just looking at a bunch of videos.
Right.
Like
no SIGGRAPH.
GDC though, there's a couple, South by. There's a couple of things I don't really want to just let go of just yet because I think there's something to kind of having. Some of the old school groups. I've been doing it a long time though, man. So I've seen a lot of cool companies and cool concepts come and go on the show.
We premiered San Francisco Rush at the 1996 SIGGRAPH in New Orleans.
Yeah, New Orleans. It's crazy.
The Digital Bayou. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I go back to like Comdex and like Macworld and like all these old shows, but now with immersive tech, it's still relevant because it's all kind of driving into this gaming realm, this experience realm.
Yeah. And have you been to AWE?
I have not. I have not been to AWE yet.
That's a good one. That's a pretty cool one especially for the augmented folks.
It's good because it's small. I've talked about it before. The funny thing, it's been going on for like I think close to 15 years now. And like when I went in 2016 the first time, I was like, oh, this is quaint. Like I see people I know and I can actually talk to them and I'm not exhausted just walking around. And people are like, oh, you should have seen it like 7 years ago. It was like in a high school gym and it was like 10 of us. But so to them it's like this, like, oh my God, look, there's maybe a couple thousand people here. And and I'm like, oh, this is fun. Like I can chit chat with people and not not get sweaty backpack strap shoulders and hunched over.
Okay. Guilty, dude. Guilty. I'm a sweaty backpack guy. Mostly because I'm carrying around like a giant graphics card and some kind of laptop or something where I'm trying to show the latest greatest. But
or like two HMDs hanging off of your shoulders and
like two bricks. It's like you can dual wheel.
So Jimmy, the reason I asked you to come on the show is that is that there's something I got involved with at Magic Leap that just blew my mind with its abilities. You have a full stage. In fact, it's the stage behind you.
Yeah.
It's volumetric video capture, and I wanted to rap with you about just I don't know if people don't know what volumetric video capture is. It's a series of machine vision cameras that all point in to a stage area, and there's a capture area that you have to kind of stay within, and then all of those cameras fire off at the same time at a relatively high frame rate between 30 and 60. I think that the new version does 60 frames, right?
Yeah, we shoot at 60 FPS on the high end right now,
Right.
and it's
and so then there's all those. I just want to kind of like go just like get through the whole thing.
sure.
Those cameras capture, let's say, 60 frames a second. They're either 2K or 4K machine vision cameras. They're just pumping data into a big NAS, a storage system, and then that gets fed into a giant compute stack, and they basically do photogrammetry, silhouette masking, and some other tricks depending on whether it's 4D Fuse or Microsoft. But they essentially build a mesh per frame with texture, and
Right.
then you can play that back in AR, VR, on flat screens and stuff like that. And what I love about it is that it actually captures, it may not be as high res as your traditional scan and rig, Princess Leia model from the later movies, but it captures those little tiny human nuances where your face does something or your arm does something, and it's just completely natural, and it's also completely that person. Like, it's something that you can't really replicate unless you've got somebody who's just studied the hell out of that person. They're not going to see that their little pinky always kind of goes in when they're happy or something like that. Just all those weird little things that happen, that are unique to each of us. And when you capture something in volumetric video, you capture like all of it. And all the nuance of the action is captured and playable, and I love that. Anyway,
on the raw capture part where you're just, it's basically a whole bunch of cameras calibrated together and capturing frame. Is it measured like in gigabytes per frame or per second? Like what's the rule of thumb, and like the data you're capturing per frame or per second, like just raw size wise, like it's big, right?
It's big. So these are dedicated OBJ sequences with a PNG sequence embedded running over the top. And of course, each project is different depending on usually the deployment that is the choice for each project, depending on where you're going with it, and whether the asset's going to end up in Unity or Unreal, what the pipeline is going to be that's established post shoot. And then you have a file size target at that point, right? So that's what we drive towards for each individual project that we're trying to package. And we've been successful on a few build outs that have been some cool projects at this stage. But I'll back up a little bit and I'll talk a little bit about the stage itself. So it is a 4D view system, and like 2D, 3D, 4D. And essentially it's
what's the fourth dimension, Jimmy?
Let me show you. So essentially, that allows us to actually do some really cool things on screen. But you mentioned momentarily ago that obviously on 2D screens, but even things like the Looking Glass and some of the new AR sort of prism type screens can really display this kind of content in a new and immersive way. Also, that brings interactive capabilities if you have sensors like Leap Motion and things like that you can throw in the mix. So there's some really interesting kind of project-based solutions where you can park this particular type of media. So what this system does is it allows us to choose that frame rate ahead of time. So if it's for example, a project like for film or television where the director and the project itself might be 24 FPS based, if we know that going in, then we'll probably shoot the volumetric video to match that frame rate. We can actually, jump up to 48, double that, give it more data. But
wouldn't that give you more latitude if you shot at twice the speed?
It's just going to give you a tighter silhouette. Okay, so what this does is it's not necessarily a point cloud. It's not a scanning solution where you're depth sensing. Okay, these are FLIR backs, and it's actually shooting in a cropped 4K. So the middle of that image from each one of these focal cones is what we're getting to create that PNG sequence.
So you're just spending a whole bunch of time also recreating the cables and the stanchions and the green screen and stuff like that, right? So you're saving process time.
Well, here's the thing: a lot of people walk into the room behind me and they go, "Green screen." Pfft, I get it. I watch the news. I've seen the weather, man. Like, I know what you do. And that's actually not what 4D Views does at all. And what it does is it learns background. And you can see we have a drapery system here. This is actually a flex stage for us. So we do multiple types of motion capture, not just volumetric. We have our 4D View system here, but we'll talk about the other optical and inertia-based solutions that we have in place too that we kind of mix and match with, sometimes at the same time.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So we focus on virtual production on a pretty high level, and basically it's character-centric or performance-centric. Okay, so in the theater of volumetric video, what we do is we activate a 3-meter circle with this system. And the performance that occurs in that radius is really what this OBJ sequence becomes. And those little nuances that Spence was talking about are really captured in that PNG sequence that's running over the top. And so 4D Views is a partner for the CMII, or Creative Media Industries Institute, which is a mouthful, but it is a industry-facing institute that's focused on immersive technology here in Atlanta at Georgia State University. And I myself am a professor of practice. So we have this set up in a practicum. Okay, so there's a 16-week program where students actually have access to this system. And the 4D Views installation in Atlanta is one of only 8 in the world. There's over 50 volumetric stages of various types, ranging from Microsoft, Intel, and a lot there's different solutions.
Oh, there's that killer map that Arcturus, right? They put out we'll put links to that map, but it's basically a map of all of the stages around the planet, and whether it's Microsoft or I think AdWeek is even still doing stuff, right?
What happened to AdWeek? Are they still kicking?
They're there.
They're a thing.
There's business everywhere. But we partnered with 4D because they're the oldest game. They really focus on quality, so we want quality in these digital double performances on this stage.
Right. What's the name of it? It's there's an Israeli company. Remember the name of that one?
There's a few. You'll have to.
I'll look it up.
There's some live solutions that are very very alluring right now that I've been looking into, but the 4D View system has some really, really interesting updates, and we've been you mentioned example, we just added 5 more of those server stacks to our system. So we're actually rating at about 10 to 15 hours per character minute. So basically, that's a pretty quick turnaround in the grand scheme of things. When you say 10 to 15 hours per character minute, you're talking about how long it takes to go from basically 1 minute of input video streams to 1 minute of sequential OBJ.
Listen,
right. There you go.
Listen.
Can I do that?
That's both topical and inappropriate.
It's just slapstick, blur it out.
No, it's fine. I've been trying to get in the habit. I'm drinking the Brew Free or Die Blood Orange IPA.
I'm gonna say my close friends and those that have eaten a lot of sushi with me, sashimi across the globe, know that it's always the Artois time. But when times are tough, and you're going for the slapstick.
Yeah.
Right.
How's the Corona in Georgia? It's ice cold and delicious.
Funny story. So I lived in Denver, Colorado for a while, and we used to drive to Golden just to buy the Coors Light there because it was a different beer, and nobody ever believed us. But we were like, "No, you don't understand."
It's like the Texas Dr. Pepper. It's like
yeah. It's the same. It's the same, local folklore. But yeah, I think it's just a psychosomatic
So I was just
thing.
thinking about you mentioned earlier about the 40 views not really requiring a green screen. Is it doing segmentation based off people, or is it actually analyzing,
No.
calibrating to the background?
So it is totally learning the background. So it does require green space. So 40 views is not a mobile unit. So for example, you can break this down. We do start, and to give you an example of what that kind of looks like, this is our same space set up for
look at you
match
presenting
motion.
Inside of our new presentation with your own setup. Nice.
Slid it right up.
Nice.
I mean, this is just Ubisoft's data match motion set on the floor in gaffer's tape. It's no big deal. It's not nerdy at all.
Yes, super nerdy.
And also our giant, infinite 8-foot by 25-foot projector wall that we do some fun stuff with from time to time there. And this is the same stage. You can see the carpets rolled up behind me.
Yeah.
And so we strike on that. It's about a 50 by 40 stage where we have a 40 camera OptiTrack. But no, it is required that we have this green space here. And each individual capture, a background and a calibration is required in a particular system. So we will train each one of these cameras to a very specific calibration setting. And you can see the pods, or these trusses, are actually different types. So this is what we call our Z pod. That's low angle cameras. This is what we call
a T pod, right?
That's an iPod. It's not what you have your Pixies on, Spencer. It's an iPod because it's the high angle.
Dude, I built one of these systems in LA.
I know.
Well,
what you're doing.
So just so we can make sure we don't lose anybody, or try not to lose anybody. Like back to what Spencer was saying about, there's this array of cameras that are simultaneously synced and grabbing the scene from all sorts of angles at the same time, and doing it 30 plus times a second. For that to really work well, there is a moment of calibration where all these cameras know where they are, at least relative to some reference point. And
correct. Multiple.
And so and so when you move this thing around, you got to recalibrate, right? And when you set it up or set it down, the calibration is key. And actually, this is true for any camera, like AR headsets, VR headsets. The rigidly mounted cameras calibrated well are like directly translate into the quality of either tracking or imagery you get out of it, or data you get out of it.
Well, I mean, this is the same thing that happens with when you do an AR experience. You scan the floor and it tracks
technically
and calibrates itself
calibrating
to the floor.
The device. But like then on top of that, all that to even work at a lower level, you've got to calibrate the camera to the sensors, the IMU and the gyroscope, and
right.
And like the advantage that like hardware some headsets and some phones is that the cameras are kind of rigidly mounted, and like it goes even deeper, right? I'm totally like, you've also got to know the intrinsics of the lenses, and like to really know what all you're really trying to do is say, giving a well-known ground truth, where does this device think it is and looking relative to that. And so back to the background thing, were you saying that in that moment of calibration, you also just capture the background and say, this is our background right now?
We do.
Okay.
We do. We learn a background, and that in itself is something very particular to 40 views that allows us to introduce a lot of different virtual cinematography techniques for introducing props or virtual assets that are later, canceled or removed. So we actually had a proxy Subaru Outback that we set up as an AR model that we actually used reality capture to get the accurate 3D model that we could then articulate the doors. And on stage, we had the actual performer with some C stands able to move that pivot point. So it was that she was able to effectively get in and out of the car in AR on the screen. And so, in the capacity that I act here as not only just a professor of practice, and so as a teacher, but also as a technical director for a lot of these shoots, where we're having to figure out what the secret sauce is, what the pipeline's going to be, which direction we're going. Is it Unity? Is it Unreal? Is it a Maya sequence that we're going to, come back out in Alembic? So we have some options coming out of this system, and 40 Views have done a really cool job of upgrading HoloSys, which is actually their Ubuntu-based operating system.
And like, what would you? So like, I'm thinking back to like when Spencer was really getting into this stuff a few years ago, and it was still early days, and it was like, there's things with like the green screen part that you kind of have to deal with in the 2D world, like. It's like it's illuminate. You see the green illuminating a surface in the scene, and then I remember the early days of VolCap was, keeping in mind that the scene solves to a piece of geometry or resolves into a piece of geometry, which kind of limits, like you're not going to capture smoke, for example, this way, or like and like the thing for a long time was the old Voldemort face, right? The nose was always. It's like has all that improved? Is there still like big challenges in it?
Quite a bit, actually. So they've addressed a lot of the silhouetting, and so that, yes, will give you more of a exact geometry on the nose. Now, a lot of times, really what you set up in terms of your calibration and your background learning is also further enhanced by not only the pod lighting, which are each one of the 3 lights that are on these, but you can see above here, just in this virtual background, that we also have some RE sky panels. So we use a very particular color temperature to make sure that we dial in this space. Then we're very particular about who can affect the curtain. For example, you can see this seam or this split here. That's actually going back to our prop room. But that would have to be completely learned in the background because, of course, the algorithm is looking for the shadows or the black areas, right?
Right.
So it's going to go ahead and find all the cameras, this kind of thing.
I was remembering that you would go if that split was in the in one of the cameras. Then during the calibration setup, you would mask that split. You'd be like, okay, so don't pay attention to this part, but you can pay attention to this part over here. And let's say camera 1 is looking directly at that thing, and then camera 2 has got it off to the side. You mask it in both. Camera 2 picks up what camera 1 can't get because it's masked right there. Correct. And camera 1 picks up what camera 2 can't. It's kind of like they trade off. So you've got a mask on camera 1 of this thing and a mask on camera 2, but because they're at different angles and you really can build geometry and the texture map from slightly different angles, then it all works out fine.
But does it capture the rig, or do you mask it out later? Like, do you mask out the rig in at capture time, or do you just take it out in post, like after it's turned into geometry?
You have to define rig. So rig can be so many things, right?
Right. The camera scaffolding and the 2 cameras looking across
called a pod
across the scene from each other. They're
so
they're
the
seeing
pods
each other.
themselves, the algorithm knows to automatically look for things like the lights and the cameras because this is a very specific placement in the circle.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
And there's actually 8. So you can see 4 in this configuration in the photo behind me, but it would continue on in the circle. So essentially each pod or each truss carries 4 cameras. So there's 32 cameras in all, or 32 focal cones. And like Spencer was talking about, you absolutely can. And when you walk into a room full of artists and you go, we're going to mask stuff, they go, I get it. And you go, no, you don't. You don't. You totally don't get it, because it's foreground versus background in relation to the active capture space, or the 3-meter radius circle, given that the 4D view system activates once you calibrate and learn a background. So essentially, there's a lot of stage prep. There's a lot of pre-pro days that go into getting this dialed in. You know, I'm usually up on the ladder, like adjusting this camera just by millimeters from time to time. And it is a very particular system. But if you give it the color temperature, if you give it the exact camera targeting calibration and placement, then you have a very photoreal representation that comes back out in the sequence. And so it does pick up these little nuances. Of course, you know, we do things like wardrobe, you know, assessment and direction. So Spencer can't walk on with the glasses. I lose the glasses. Paul, you and I both have to lose hats or flip them around backwards. There are certain things that you don't want to give a volumetric system, like a thin brim of a hat, or a reflective surface. Like
and even that black shirt, right?
Well, we've perfected black, I think. We've got.
Do you just spray some hairspray on it? Is that the trick?
Do you dust it, or
yeah? Oh man, I am the king of doling spray.
Yeah, nice.
We have sent many talent and art directors to the alleyway in the back of the studio. So
I mean, is like, I mean, that was for people that didn't catch that goofy joke. Like, I mean. When you deal with cameras and reflections and stuff, like, and on top of that, volumetric capture or 3D capture, reflective and clear surfaces are kind of a nightmare. So like, there's fancy production versions, or you can just spray some Aquanet on some stuff sometimes. And,
it's true.
It's
not just for Motley Crue anymore.
That's it's kind of interesting though, because like you really do. It's like people have created massive careers around green screen, chroma key capture of film and video. And you're basically taking that, you've got to take all that knowledge and all that kind of like, your headspace is in the space of cameras are looking at this scene and segmenting out things based off color. But on top of that,
and Millennium Falcon's going like this.
Yeah. And now you're talking about thinking about, oh, well, this is going to resolve into a mesh as well. So like now I got to think about like like you said, like a thin brimmed hat. Like it's one thing to tell people like, oh, you can't wear a thin brimmed hat on this capture. It's another to know why and to like spot those things early in pre-production before they become a problem. Is that what is that the art of this right now? Is like really knowing the challenges and opportunities?
One of the things that we used to say is you can fix it in pre.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. This is our world. So previs, pre-production, all these things, we're pre guys in a lot of these areas where it's really effective, where it's cost effective for companies to explore this technology and actually utilize it, because it's great that you can do it, but if you can't do anything with the output, then what are you really doing with it, you know? So we have a couple of different avenues that we'll throw at the system from time to time, but with volumetric specifically, you've got some things that absolutely, if you have somebody that has a trained eye, or if you have a group of student engineers that can look at somebody and go, your high heels are going to fill in, or you might need to put your hair up in a bun versus having it hang down and become one piece of geometry on your face. You know, things
right.
like,
or your head is too shiny.
Right.
You know? Right.
I won't.
Can we spray some Aquanet on your bare head?
Yeah, we've had makeup solutions on set. It's actually an interesting point about this facility too. So we are the only stage that I know of that's active right now that is a no contact capture stage. Kind of, elaborate a little further. We have a control room just to the side of this 50 by 40 space that we're talking about behind me. That is linked with talk-through microphones, witness cameras that are both for the brain bar and also for the talent. So there's a camera that's just off camera right here that pokes
Please describe brain bar.
Yeah, I would like to know what brain bar is.
So it's where they stick the nerds, right?
Okay. I go there.
Brain bar.
That is where I be. Okay, I get it. I get
So
it now.
the engineers and the people that are really in the hot seat for the data, they live at the brain bar.
Got it.
So right. The beautiful part about that is anybody who doesn't wear that hat can be in the other room, literally on another wall, a wall away, completely self-contained, and we actually have enough space and enough small crew sort of approaches to some of these solutions like Volumetric, where we might only have 3 engineers in the room, maybe a producer and 2 engineers, or a producer and a technical director and an engineer. And so we will literally interface with the technology and never come within 10 feet of somebody actually walking in and out of this space. So your talent actually doesn't even come into contact with us. Directors.
I mean, I'm sorry that we have to deal with
it. Is important. It is very topical today.
Yeah,
it's true. So we have an interesting facility for that, where you get literally there's 3 monitors mounted on the wall in this room where you can see my screen, you can see what I'm seeing through these cameras when we capture, because we actually have real-time playback of these video feeds. So imagine I can view Spencer from 32 beautiful angles of his deep V with the double deep V, and be like, "Hey man, you gotta button up the second V because that's going to capture in that PNG sequence."
No, this is my show. I don't have to do anything.
You have to. I'm the technical director. You're missing the point. This is what I do. So
before I didn't want to let it slide too far. I just want to let you know that your homie Tag with 2 G's is in the chat, and and said, "Yo, Jimmy, iClone," and also said James is a badass. So I just want to shout it out. No question, no comment.
It's official.
It's true. James is a badass.
The word is out.
Yeah. By the way, if anybody has any questions, please. We will just ramble this time away unless.
So actually, I want to. While people are thinking about questions, I want to just real quick go back to the to the green screen. One of the things that was, I didn't really understand, and when my first experience with this tech was in Grenoble in France, and Richard and the guys there, helped us through it and kind of shepherded us through the whole thing.
But he's been there because he doesn't say Grenoble.
Right?
yeah,
Grenoble.
And one of the things that was surprising to me was, don't touch the screen. Don't touch the green screen. It's a curtain, and it's got a leaded thing across the bottom, and it's in a specific spot. And the reason you don't touch that screen is that if you make a ripple, like if you make it, if let's say there's a little bend in it and it catches a little bit of light right here, if you move that and it does this, there's different light here, and all of a sudden now you have to remask that camera or those cameras that are looking at that. So just don't touch the green screen. And I never really. Yeah.
Isn't the worst case scenario like just some geometry comes in where that ripple is? Is that
it does?
Is
and
that
you can
part?
Cut that out, but it also it's going to add to your processing time, and it's going to add noise.
Okay.
When you're talking about render times like this for one particular system, because we might do a rate card where on the last capture that we did during COVID, I can speak a little bit about this. It's for a pretty cool
top secret exclusive chat.
It's for thing. It's before the CDC, so it might be zombies or something. But essentially, this was a day where we did volumetric capture, facial capture, and full body motion capture all in one day with a particular talent. So we literally might utilize this stage and be very, very particular about the curtain assessment,
Oh,
the
hell
curtain
yeah.
placement. I'm pretty particular about my entrance and exits for talent.
So I have a question for you then. So you did motion capture.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming Paul Reynolds or something like that, some kind of magnetic capture or motion capture system. Then you also did a facial capture, and you did a volumetric.
Yes.
You obviously didn't do all of those at the same time.
No, we did them same day, same place.
Same day, same place. So were all of those to be married together into the same action?
I can't tell you that. Yeah. So
you can't. Come on, we don't have to know who it was.
Yes, because
I like aggressive interviewer Spencer.
Good man. So for that particular project, the intent is to utilize not only game assets but also a virtual guide that the likeness of the person is extremely important to maintain a realism to their persona because of who they are and what they do.
I don't think there's any major TV or film production happening in Atlanta or Georgia. I don't know. We
don't do that stuff down here.
Actually,
we quit.
Little side note. So I started my game development career when I moved to Chicago, and then I eventually moved back to South Carolina. And I got invited to the first year of SiegeCon, which was the Georgia Game Developers Conference.
Shout out to Andrew Greenberg.
Exactly.
I'm the GGDA.
Nice.
Absolutely.
And so I went to SiegeCon, and I was one of the few people that done console games. So I was like, oh my God, like tell us all about like PlayStation 2. That's how old this was. But then
what's up?
At the same time, Georgia had just started the economic development. Oh man, I forgot his name. Super nice guy. And he was really driving film and game production in Georgia with the economic development incentives and stuff. That was well before, I don't know, little things like, the little Walking Dead production thing you probably heard of.
So like myself, we have some other cool people that are in this facility. Tom Luce was the executive producer of The Walking Dead. And Tom can be found lurking around quite a bit, up on the second floor. He maintains an office here. Candace Alger is long time, 35 years in virtual production, Avatar, Lord of the Rings, a lot of really, really notable virtual avatars and digital doubles like Smeagol. That are kind of on her list of kills, and we kind of have a cool group that also is comprised of people who are very focused on innovating with these tools, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, we took a team last summer. We went out on hiatus during the summer with a small group of us that were focused on virtual production in Unreal, and we ended up attaching to Suicide Squad 2 and working out of Pinewood all summer. So basically what we were doing were personifying digital cast members and then also doing all the MoCap. So we broke a world record on that with the team.
What was the world record?
So we did 12 live link suits in 49,000 square feet of volume on stage. So we were working with James Gunn on Previz on a daily basis early on. This was about this time last summer, actually, about a year ago. And taking his boards and doing a lot of the Previz directly through the Unreal pipeline there. So facial animation, motion capture, and all of that with a stunt team that was established out of Australia that are credited for a lot of really, really cool action sequences.
Wow.
So this was at Pinewood?
Yeah. So, and speaking to the tax incentive, we have an executive director in place, Brennan Dicker, who was formerly with the Georgia Production Partnership, and then also Lisa Farrell is a Georgia Production Partnership co-president. That the people that are also in the institute are instrumental in things like the tax incentive authoring for the economic growth in not just film and television, but AR, VR, gaming. And there's like, people joke around. They're like, yeah, there's a couple of productions going on in Georgia, right? But there's 50 plus movies usually at any given time when the
Yeah.
world's not ending. Lots of HBO productions are done still right here in Georgia, and then the gaming industry and a lot of these smaller studios and some of the larger ones are still operating out, like High Res and Tripwire, still make titles that are relevant.
Right.
Is
So
SiegeCon still a thing?
Siege is still going.
Okay.
I presented at Siege with Mark Simon, who also did all the storyboards for The Walking Dead. And so there's some of these places, man. Like that's, I guess, to tie a little nice little bow on a loop here. When you walk in a room and you've got nerds like me and Mark Simon sitting at a table, and Ginger Tanta Vitong, who is the head of ASIFA and the International Animation Association here in Georgia, and you can talk to all three of us at once. That's pretty cool. I love Atlanta for that. I love Georgia for that. The tax incentive, I think, is what a lot of people hang that on.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's a lot of people that are just tired of the West Coast thing sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I tried to make a go out of being a tech and a game dev in South Carolina. It's tough. Like, it literally, I grew up in the upstate near Georgia. Literally, my mom, when I first was driving, she was like, if you ever get lost, just take the signs on I-85 towards Atlanta and you'll wind up in Greenville, which is where I grew up. And
yeah, okay.
but like just searching for anyone that, like, it's really funny because I just got a tweet a couple days ago from someone who grew up and lived in South Carolina on the coast in Myrtle Beach, and they work for GitHub, and they're like, does anybody, they're moving to Brooklyn, and they're like, does anybody work in tech and from South Carolina? And I got tagged, and I was like, yeah, we're here. We're here. And I wound up in Atlanta at SiegeCon because of that, like, because I was always trying to find people. Burton Posey was who really sticks out to me.
Burton Posey. I know. I've met Burton.
He was a part of SiegeCon. That's how I met him, and he was really pushing kind of the like indie game dev scene in there, and I think he's gone on to do a bunch of other cool things. But like, kind of taking it back to our audience and our crowd, like, there is a community around you. Like, the difference between us and like, or living in the South or living in a place where I guarantee you there's somebody within 20, 30 miles of you that is like-minded, and no matter where you are, and like, and so like it may take more work. Like, yeah, if you're in San Francisco, you just go to a meetup and you meet 100 people that you probably don't want to talk to, honestly. But like, if you do find that person within the 30-mile radius and you think you're in the middle of nowhere, you'll be, like I said, Burton Posey, I met 15 years ago. I still remember his name because we had that bond. Speaking of, I kind of want to tie it into, we did get a couple questions. And so Steve Christian, who was on, was that just our last? No, the episode before last. Really talented animator, artist, developer. Well, he doesn't like to be called full stack, but you're full stack, Steven. I'm going to call you that.
Yeah, anyway, whether you like it or not, buddy.
So he was in our Discord just a week or so ago asking about, like, he was wanting to use a Connect, and he does hand animation. He actually animates fully in Unity, and can
I do that? Can I just do that?
Yeah, totally. A Connect V2. I know those well.
I'm telling you, man. Yeah, it's like, now everybody's gonna be like, ha, that's not the right version.
But like, if you're a
PC,
if you're a baller on a budget in an apartment, what do you recommend someone to do to, like, capture motion? Like,
Dude, I mean, I'm sitting here. I literally, right beside me, I have an Awinda, I have perception neurons, I have, a Rococo, literally
I think the
on
key word
fridge.
there was baller on a budget.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But man, it's better than it's ever been before, really, for inertia based. Honestly, I was one of the people that actually went to Beijing. I went to Noitam's headquarters back, I want to say, in 2014 or 2015, back when they were at Kickstarter, before they had actually delivered Perception Neuron 1.0, which had hands, which was a big get for us because you actually had sensors that would drive you crazy when you went to curve edit and clean, but you had articulating fingers. And I actually captured Keanu Reeves for the movie Replicas in 2016 with that solution. I have that suit here. Um, and one thing that I get charged with a lot, not only in this job here for school purposes and student purposes, but also for industry work, obviously, we get called in to create pipelines that are on budget. Okay. So that might be a production crew that's looking to, have a solution that is a very robust sort of offering for motion capture. And then there's people that contact me all the time. Most recently, a buddy of mine that was working at Adult Swim here in town and now is down in Australia. And he's like, "Hey, man, what about that Rococo suit?" And I'm like, "Yeah, at 2,500, that's your price point if you're your weekend warrior, and you just want to get some spine movement." But if you're looking for data quality, and in my opinion, it's Xsense every time. Their HD processing in NVN Studio is really second to none in my opinion, and Noitom Perception Neuron Pro is really a strong second to that at 4,500. So, if you're a baller on the
So
budget, that extra 2K matters. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
I'm gonna add a much lower budget item, which still has some relatively good output for some project, and that would be Hoxel. Have you messed around with Hoxel yet?
I haven't.
Uh,
There's a lot of those solutions that are really alluring. There's some AI solutions that are emerging where,
this is
you
on a
know,
cell phone.
yeah, you can take any
Cell
video
phone
footage.
based, uses the
Well,
depth camera
Mhm.
and captures a point or captures a geometry at
so
this point. But I would love it if they would.
even on the cutting edge of technology, there's still this trade-off of cost and pain, and
Right.
and quality, right? And it's a triangle, and like if you don't have a lot of money, you're gonna have to give up some pain and some quality. Um, but Steve,
I love curve
yeah,
editing. What can I say? Give me JIT,
keep in
man.
mind,
Come on.
Steve has hand animated keyframes in the Unity animator, not even a dedicated animation tool. So he's willing to go through the pain for sure. But
I've seen some of Spencer's pain and stuff that he suffered through as
so
well. So I know there's crazy
he
people
he
out there.
specifically mentioned that he picked up iClone, which I know you are. You a certified trainer of iClone? You're associated with iClone. So what he's got iClone. He's an artist.
Mhm.
He wants to make 3D things dance in AR, but he's scraping it. He's rubbing his nickels and pennies together. Like what is
Sure.
the recommended recipe there?
Unity's free, man. And then when you're talking about AR Kit or AR Core, there's a lot of solutions there. You've got Lens Studio, Snapchat. You've got some options, right? When you're talking about AR, if you're talking about full body AR, if you want full body meshes that maybe you've got something running on a plane or doing some plane detection for some animation, that's definitely something that Spark AR, Lens Studio, these kinds of
Well,
things.
I think he's wanting to use. Well, first of all, I will admit I don't know a lot about iClone, but I think what he's wanting to produce animated content that will be
Uh-huh.
viewed in AR. So he's not necessarily wanting to use AR as his anchor captures. It's more like he's building characters or content
Hmm.
that will be viewed. So the AR part of it is almost is almost like secondary in this question. It's more like I'm
So
I'm, I'm building it. I'm building I'm building animated content basically.
totally. So that's my sweet spot, man. My bread and butter is iClone. So iClone is a real-time animation tool, and it allows you to do a variety of things, from character animation, camera animation, light and particle animation. It has physics for both bullet and PhysX solutions. These things can be live linked to tools like Unreal. You can send over cameras, lights, characters directly to Unreal, and then you're going to get some benefits there. And of course, if you're an FBX sort of exporting pipeline user of iClone, then you can take the animations that you're creating in a non-linear editor, because that's what it is at the end of the day. So you're creating keyframes on a timeline or using motion clips. They have an extensive library that allows you to literally drag and drop or double click motions onto avatars. And
you've been using iClone forever too.
Oh my God, yeah, man. I started at the beginning with iClone, and also their other flagship tool called Crazy Talk, and then now Crazy Talk as cartoon animator has emerged. So there's 2D solutions, there's 3D solutions, but yes, I was the first certified trainer in the United States for iClone specifically. So
remember when we met at SIGGRAPH,
yeah,
like 2015 or whatever it was, and I was all enamored with all of the scanning offerings that were out there. I was like, oh my God, and see this, and you're like, let me show you. I'm going to build you in 5 minutes.
I did.
And
I think I clocked in
no
at like
way.
3:10.
And so he goes in and he's like, and he grabs a standard avatar human male form, and then like looks at me and goes for like 5 minutes, and he had a very, very passable version of Spencer in iClone in like 5 minutes. It was unfreaking real.
That's had gasoline thrown on it. So there is actually a new plugin for Character Creator. Character Creator is, if iClone is your stage, Character Creator is, okay. And so Character Creator is a middle of the road point for avatar bases to begin. You can do things like explore the GoZ pipeline if you're a ZBrush artist, manipulate them, model them, and basically stay within the realms of the rigging, but you basically get the rigging for free, down to the eyeballs, even the tongue, believe it or not.
Wow.
And it has Vicene, generation, and so you can read a wave, you can read an MP3, and so you can generate voiceover and facial animation instantly. So not only can you generate somebody, but you can animate them effectively as fast. But Headshot is the new plugin. This is a neural network trained, and it was actually, have you guys seen this person does not exist.com, the AI site?
Yeah.
They use that neural net to train this tool, and you have a pro or a regular version where you can approach it that will actually generate a hair model, and also a 4K render of the face. So now you can take a single photograph of a Spencer, right, and run it through Headshot and actually create a MoCap ready, face cap ready avatar that also can then be dressed virtually. So we have a strong interest right now in the virtual fashion design industry, where we're utilizing the Marvelous Designer pipeline, and that allows us to bring in physics ready clothing to these avatars as well. So any pattern is able to be personified, and this is stackable. So collision is automatically identified. And so we're talking minutes for a fully clothed Spencer that's ready for animation.
Why is this not days. More? What do they have a terrible marketing department? Or I mean, like, why don't more people know about this? Because I had no idea about it. And honestly, after you showed me that, I looked it up a couple times and have never heard anything about it since. So it's like, but it still exists, and it's really amazing, apparently. So why isn't it more used?
So it's one of these tools. You ever go into like a somewhere that's doing high end editing, and they said, "Well, we have an Avid," but you walk into the back and they're editing on Premiere.
Right.
Right.
Has that ever happened to
We've got the
you?
multicolored keyboard.
yeah.
That means we're legit.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
I've got the cheat sheet, but
So so my question though is it like what Houdini was like a while back before anyone really knew what the hell Houdini was except for geeks in Hollywood?
that's fair. That's fair for VFX for sure. For real time, and my theory is this: for many years, it wasn't really needed to have a real time optimized solution. But when gaming and interactivity started to become more of a client ask, when a faster, more rapid prototyping solution for things like dailies became more of an industry standard ask, then all of a sudden you're getting companies that are doing this high level previs, right? So think about previs on something like the Avengers with a studio like Method, where you've got tons and tons of people working on this.
So this really does kind of follow the Houdini arc. Then it's like it's still being used by high end VFX studios and providers for film and television.
Character Creator is probably the most widely utilized piece of software in their family of tools. I would say iClone is a strong second because iClone does something that Character Creator does not, and that is it allows you to data stream aggregate things. Okay, now what I mean by that is if I have my Spencer avatar, right, I can utilize another plugin called Motion Live. And with Motion Live, I can go to a stage like this one, and we set up our OptiTrack
nice.
40 camera solution here, and this was at Screen Gems. So if I'm doing a more large, studio-based type capture in a larger volume, then basically what I can do is I can make use of the Reallusion profiles for Motion Live and say, okay, now my motive data stream is going to be fed onto my avatar in real time.
Right.
Then if I wanted to say, let's go grab my Faceware head rig, and now I'm going through Faceware Live, or now I'm going through Live Face or another face solution, I can then stream that onto these avatars and I can see the full performance. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
Then you've even got other solutions like Manus VR gloves and Stretch Sense gloves that are, exploring the hand market now. But more and more in virtual production, we get the ask for all of these things to happen at once.
Right.
So a creative director can stand in front of a monitor and say, okay, I like the way that this avatar looks. And First Unit might come back and say, hey, totally new casting. Okay. It's not going to be actor A, it's going to be actor X. And now he's going to be this person. Well, we might already have wardrobe established or this virtual clothing done, but we can hot swap out these avatars for faces very quickly, utilizing what's actually learned with AI.
Very cool.
Since you mentioned OptiTrack, as a Portland and Oregon resident, I'm always required to mention when a company is based out of Oregon, and OptiTrack is in Corvallis, not far from Portland.
Natural point, yeah.
So it always freaks me out when I we've actually got a pretty impressive Autodesk presence here as well. So it's like there's all these funny. Tektronix is another one.
What I was going to say about North Carolina, it's not North Carolina, but right up in Cary, there's
a little place called Epic.
A little company doing a little something up there.
They got a new game out called Fortnite. I think it's going to make money.
I don't know, man, but I can tell you that my 9-year-old feeds me for V-Bucks.
Well, I'm a 40-plus-year-old and I have V-Bucks, so I don't know if it's.
I
don't know if I'm proud.
To buy the Battle Pass. You hear me? I refuse to buy the Battle Pass.
I just want to do a real quick little poll of the audience. Does anyone notice that since we have Jimmy, who is obviously from the South, on the show, that Paul's accent has kind of deepened?
I think he just tuned into it. Funny story. I lost my Southern accent in South Carolina. because of all the
What?
because of all the carpetbaggers that live in Myrtle Beach.
Ah,
All the people from Ohio and New Jersey.
yeah.
There was a question a
So
long time ago that I thought it was a really good one that David Solon asked,
Okay.
and I would like to read it, but I may not be able to find it. But his question was essentially, if you had a dream tool that would really solve most of the pains pipeline wise, like what would it be? I think he probably said it better than I just did, but
That's pretty
that's the
good.
gist of it.
That's pretty good.
If you
Um,
could create a tool to help with your pipeline, what would you make? There we go.
wow. So we have a variety of development asks, and a lot of times, I don't know if you're a Silicon Valley fan, but sometimes it equates to like Rustfest. And people come and they go, "You've got this crazy volumetric thing we hear about, and it makes like holograms, right? So like, can we do this or can we do that?" And we get these really outlandish sort of project asks from creative minds that just are trying to really push the envelope. And I love that because it really does. If I had the ability to create something, it would be the ability to probably replicate some kind of viewer that can equate to the human brain and how the human eye works. So the reason that Magic Leap is still kind of Magic Leap, there's some people that have been going down this rabbit hole for many years, and VR is not new for us. These pipelines are not new for us. But really, the end output for a lot of this eye candy that we're all very versed in creating, whether that's avatar based or mesh based or just a variety of different 2D and exploratory techniques, I would love to have a viewer that allowed us to actually see a more immersive um, content. I think Looking Glass is really probably the front runner in that game right now. But I would love.
what about HoloLens or Magic Leap? I mean, like
I
being
mean,
able to.
yeah, and I hope Apple, swoops in and saves us all again, right? I really do
But no,
believe.
my question is, why are you saying that Looking Glass, although I really freaking love that system,
Mhm.
why are you saying that Looking Glass is, maybe you're not saying this, do you
Mm.
think it's better than an HMD AR
This is going on the record.
solution?
I want Blade Runner, man. I want
You
giant.
want it to just beam into your retina.
Yeah, I want it. I
Yeah,
want
okay.
it plugged directly into the back of my brain, Matrix style. I am one of these guys that are like, yes, Elon, give me some neural lace implants, please. Um, but I would love to be able to display full body human content in such a way where you could walk around it, you could experience it. And there's been some interesting things over the years and emerging technologies at places like SeaGraph, where I think USC did a curved projection rig where they had like 260 projectors and like 6 workstations or some crazy thing
Right.
like that to give you that infinite mirror. But if I had, I mean, it's either that or speeder bikes, right?
Oh, I want speeder bikes. I'm
Right.
with you on that, man.
Either way.
Let's get some speeder bikes.
Yeah.
I'm in. Um, so along those lines, I had an experience when I was at Magic Leap, and I was kind of going back and forth with. We had a team of people in LA that were doing scan and rig 3D in the most amazing way. They were doing just these incredibly beautiful 3D characters. Micah was one of them,
Yep.
and just spectacular 3D.
Hmm.
However, it didn't like really cross the what I used to call the creepy canyon, the uncanny valley, and on film, you can kind of get away with it because people are watching the performance, and maybe some other stuff is happening, and you can kind of like blur it a little bit. But when it's standing in front of you, and unfortunately, in my case, I had the PEQ, which was our runner-up to the ML1, on my head, and I'm standing there, and she was overscaled by like 1.15 or something like that. So she was about 6'3",
Right.
and she was standing in front of me and kind of grinning and blinking and looking at me, and it was the most terrifying experience I'd ever had in my life.
An expression really matters.
Oh my God.
Yes.
And it wasn't because she was horribly made. It was just because there was some kind of like she was focused on me, because they had, of course, the eyes were, independently focusing on my head point, and like she was really paying attention to me, and she was really super not a human, but she really looked real, and it was terrifying.
Look, you got things like real time live that's happening now. These different sort of displays of these digital humans. You've got Mike Seymour, who is definitely a really high benchmark for what a nice digital human personification is in Unreal. You've got Digital Doug, and you've got some of these high level 3-lateral sort of examples.
Yes, those are great. Have you seen them in AR, standing in front of you, breathing on you?
Right. So we do have
Magic
Leap, and we definitely had HoloLens 1. So, again, in deployment, where this is going, where it's being viewed, very important, right? So we actually, with the volumetric system, we did a piece called the Character Playbook for the Super Bowl here in Atlanta a couple of years ago, and we captured the great Jerry Rice and did, I think, something like a 4 or 5 hour day with Jerry, where we then placed him in a virtual Mercedes-Benz stadium, where obviously the game was to be played. So, absolutely, proportion and scale from the front end of the capture, or the front end of whatever you're trying to personify, whether that is basically a modeled or sculpted CGI human that is a character base that's rigged, or it is a sequence that is a capture, or a lot of people also walk onto the stages and they think, oh, it's a photogrammetry thing, and it's not.
But it is.
It is, but it's not, right? Like, at the same time,
you're using structure from motion. I mean,
right.
Like, you guys use the silhouette to create a three-dimensional mask, and then you use that mask to determine what you're going to do your photogrammetry on, right? I mean, that's kind of how that system works.
Yes, but then marrying that with other digital assets, right?
I'm fascinated in that. Like, how are you attaching something to someone's hand? Are you able to put the MoCap inside of the clothing and be able to capture that?
So we do explore integration of multiple pipelines. So one thing about being at Georgia State University, we're a research school, right? So we do a lot of different sort of data analysis, and we're looking at a lot of the biometrics that come out of a lot of these captures, and having that real human wrapper, as it is, with the mesh sequence, is really a nice accompaniment to other data as well. So
just a real quick side to the audience, a volumetric video by itself has one axis point, and it never moves, and it's just a whole bunch of vertices that are flying around in this axis point. So
let me take it one step even further back, which is like, if you see a humanoid character in a video game, like, let's say if you play I'm not a little kid, but if you played Fortnite, and you had back bling, I don't know what that term is, but and you attach back bling to a character, their skin, their geometry, it doesn't change. Like, what's really changing is the data points. We call it the skeleton that's moving around, but the skin
and it's dragging those vertices around.
Is the same mesh the whole time, right? And like what Spencer's asking is like, if you attach a piece of non-captured or non-skinned, like a sword or a backpack, attach it to a character, that's fine, because the only thing that's really moving is the joints in the rig at any given time. And
right. So you're essentially attaching the sword to the rig, not to the skin.
Like literally, like the skin term is very appropriate here, right? Like it's a piece of geometry that is weighted to a reference point. And what Spencer's digging into is that typically, I don't know if this is always true, but in a volumetric capture data set, when you capture a real person in a volumetric capture, you're getting a new mesh every frame usually. Essentially.
Unless there, I mean, there's things that you can do to slow those vertices down, but they're essentially jumping all over the place every frame.
There's like compression-y type things you can do to keep it from being a whole new mesh every frame. Correct. But it's not necessarily
temporal coherence.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily this this like one uniform, we captured this person in a T-pose, and that's the geometry we're going to use.
So my question for Jimmy is, because of the fact that you've got all of these vertices flying all over the place, and you only have, basically that is one object with one reference triax, XYZ coordinate system, and you've got all these vertices flying all over the place. What I was asking Jimmy earlier was, like, how do you put a sword, the CG sword, in that guy's hand? Or how do you, I mean, even more crazy, how do you like put some clothing on that CG, or on that like roiling ball of like insanely positioned, vertices? Like, so what I'm guessing is that you guys are using some kind of either optical or IR based capture system on top of that. And I would love to, if you can talk about it, I would love to hear how you are able to match a skeleton to a basically non-skeleton or to a non-skinned thing.
Well, there's definitely a few different things out in the field, and shout out to those of you that know the development and what's going on right now. But like, there's definitely companies that are zeroing in on the artistic step of editing volumetric video or volumetric media. And essentially that gives you the ability to, in some cases, add these skeletons or bone structures to these performances or these sequences, and then that would give you an anchor point to then constraint or link to or attach to specific areas like wrists or palms. So obviously with a sword, you're going to go probably with a
neck
constraint. Right. Yeah, something like that. There's a variety of different applications for this that are starting to emerge, and really one that we're testing right now that's getting ready to probably be a front runner in the market. But when we are anticipating this need, we may also then incorporate an inertia-based unit or an IMU, and then we will track a point with that performance. So we might actually, put a sensor on it from, something like in a window, or, obviously a Vive tracker is definitely, usable data.
But then the Vive tracker gets picked up by the capture system. So then you've got a big lump on your wrist,
also,
right?
I mean, and
not all sensors are created.
They're two separate tracking systems. So do you calibrate the Vive tracking to the motion, or do you do it by hand? Like, do you do like a T-pose type of thing to start?
Yeah, it's a zero initialization. Yeah. So we know where center is in both instances, and both systems are going to give us that. So we do know where that world axis is and where that's going to exist at 000. So that also definitely helps out moving forward through the other steps in the pipeline that you're going to take with that particular workflow.
Does that mean there's a stage 000? There's a stage origin?
Yes, it does, essentially. So
it's the center of the 9-meter circle, right?
Yes, correct. For 40 views, right? But then once that comes out as either 4DS data or Alembic data, that could be subject to change, right? So your pivots and things like that can then be further edited. You can do some.
I have to thank both of you for 000. I have for 30 years been calling that 000.
I usually say origin, but nobody knows what that means. So.
Right. No, 000. It's great. I will use that from now on. Thank you.
000 sounds like a decent. Yeah. So essentially, you're preparing for that up front. You fix it in pre once again. These are little minute details that like later on down the pipe when it's late at night and it's been 60 hours of rendering and processing this data and people are waiting on builds and a specific version of Unity or specific version of Unreal. You really want to consider strongly all of these aspects with volumetric because up until now, what you shot is what you got. And that's changing. That's starting to evolve. We're seeing that, starting to change in the field like this year.
Did you see that piece that Jason Waskey? I don't know if it was Jason, but it was no, it was the guys in London at Hammerhead. They did it was on the Microsoft stage, and they did this thing with the textures. And I think it was a singer artist, and he had these incredible tattoos on his back, and then they like burned them out and had them flaming and stuff like that. And it was volumetric capture, but they modified the texture, and oh my god, it was just freaking gorgeous. It was just beautiful, and
yeah, that's something that we write a lot of shaders in house now. So. Yeah. That both Unity and Unreal have advantages in different areas depending on the look that you're trying to achieve. But where you bring back the Leia reference and the "Help Me Obi-Wan Kenobi," if I need that now, then I need somebody in the Leia wardrobe and like 5 minutes in Unreal, because used to where I would have to actually have an avatar, I'd have to have some motion capture, I'd have to do all the, shader assignment and things like that. That's where you get a lot of elegant use out of volumetric, where you need that photoreal human representation. And back to the creepy canyon, one that your brain is not
Thank you for using that.
I'm totally taking it, dude. That's mine.
You've heard Uncanny Valley, but have you heard Creepy Canyon?
If you haven't been to the Creepy Canyon, me and Spencer would take you to it.
Someone said earlier in the chat that my biggest fear is seeing Polar Express in my living room.
Oh no, easy. Because here's the thing: Candace was on Polar Express. She was the EP on that. Easy, but she would be the first to tell you she didn't do the facial animation. So there you go.
Ultimately, that's what it like. I was thinking earlier today when we were going to talk to you, like I used to work on sports video games where like MoCap is a savior because you get so much, like you get the tertiary motion, you get like just like a hockey player casually skating holding a stick. You get so much like subtle. You know that was a person at some point in the pipeline that made that motion.
Yeah. Right, you can recognize it as a.
But like the minute you go to the face, the minute the face in audio, maybe it's the audio, but like I think the Creepy Canyon runs deep once you get into the facial area. Is that true? That just feels like a gut thing.
Especially if she's 6'5".
Yeah.
But for example, right now. In HoloSys 3.4, 40 views is introduced audio. So now I get time-coded synced audio in my captures on stage natively during the actual capture itself. So the beautiful part about that is now I don't have to worry about resyncing that in Unity and then creating a prefab or resyncing that inside of Unreal and something like Sequencer or something like that. What I'm basically able to do is have that audio now that's perfect with the facial performance. And with volumetric, it's a person. It's it is 100% believable, and the human brain doesn't go no.
Right.
That's
It
not
just may
true.
not be quite as high res
Is
as some people want it to
so the
be.
moment the
Yeah,
moment you saw that first time you saw that synced captured audio with the synced visual is like is that the equivalent of like when you see your first like 60 hertz game on like you just everything just seems smoother, it just everything checks out, like it's just better.
it helps, man.
Yeah.
It helps when you have innovative leaps in interfaces and in feature sets that are taking steps out of your normal workflow, or innovating in an area that allows you to be faster and quicker to concept. That's always something that I really kind of my nerd senses go to start tingling about little things like that really I know are going to save me minutes here, hours there. And yeah, it's cool because again, with bleeding edge technology, you're seeing it grow. It's like you're watching it actually change. And with some technology where you're like, okay, I've been modeling forever in Maya, or I've been, a ZBrush guy for, 15 years or whatever the case is. And, I've been with Pixelogic since the beginning. You get really, really, really comfortable in your workflows for a lot of technical artists, I feel like. And I love it when companies are like, here's something new. Because it forces you to learn, and it forces you to innovate, and it forces you to reevaluate your workflow.
By the way, only in our ultra nerd group can you say I've been modeling for a long time, and we know what you mean. We know you
Yeah.
haven't been on like covers of magazines and GQ.
Are you kidding me?
Well, I don't know, man. Look at him.
Oh no, I
Look
mean
at him.
actually when
Come
you
on.
said you've been modeling, I immediately assumed you meant like modeling like as a
Hand
traveling.
modeling. It's like McConaughey. So he and I are the
Hand
only two
modeling.
professors of
Right.
practice that are actually, we got to start hand modeling. So, all right.
Yeah, I mean it's fascinating like to think about like so I assume I was just thinking back to this idea of like a stage origin or a capture origin or 000, and you're using multiple systems to track different things. Is it kind of become, oh, we've switched to,
But then
we we
Negro
must be in
Modelo.
the closing minutes of the show if you've upgraded to a
See, go
Modelo.
to the dark.
uh
You see. So you see where
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going.
totally. The is it is it just units to meters? Is that just the standard?
Oh man, real world
Oh God,
scale.
scale.
Well, I was just thinking
Yeah,
about like, oh, you're capturing a Vive tracker. Like, again, let me try to like put people in the same space we're in here. No pun. Actually, the pun is intended here.
actually,
Yeah,
let's see if this
yeah.
next one. Yeah,
So
okay,
like,
there we go.
imagine you've got two systems. One is capturing the silhouette and building the geometry of someone's body, and that system is only going to give you this beautiful, perfect, full color meshed capture of a person like moving around. But because of the way it captures, you don't actually know where the palm of their hand is on any given frame. So to compensate for that, you tell the actor, here, hold this Vive tracker and dance around and do your thing. Well, now you've got a second system using a totally different set of sensors and cameras and software and everything that's watching the thing in the actor. That system does not know nor care that is a object being held in the hand of the human being captured by the other system, which does not know or care about the tracker being held in the hand. And so
Right. So
at some
so how
point,
do you
so
combine those two?
so that's why that just so everyone knows, that's why I immediately asked about like, well, do you have like an idea of a stage 0, 000, or origin? Because at least you have like this notion of, okay, we all started from the same starting point. But if either one of those systems uses a different scale or some sort of oddball reference, you've got problems. So I would hope that at this point, most of us in the XR world, when we talk about real world scale of displaying content, generally we stick to units mean meters as a measure of scale. Is that
Well, and also, are we left-hand rule or
oh
right-hand
boy.
rule? Is
Yeah,
it
yeah.
Z
Yeah.
forward and X to the right
Right.
I'm a
and
game
Y
Yeah.
up,
dev. Z
or
is
like
always
Depending
forward
on
or back, never up.
Yeah, Y versus
Yeah.
Z. Let's not even go there. Essentially, yeah, the absolutely. So this is one of the spaces that we captured some pre-production on last summer. Can't talk too much about it, but you can see it's a wide open warehouse. And so where a performer is in this space is very, very, very important to the entire production all the way through to where the person who intends to see it on the other end, whether that's your friends on a YouTube channel or whether that's a director of a AAA movie that's spending $20,000 a day just doing pre-production stuff. You basically are going to be responsible for that data at the end of the day. So the reason that I have pretty strong opinions about what tools we choose to use is mostly based on the quality of the data and the time that it saves the artist. Really about the creatives that are actually in the trench, that are on the hook, for like the deployment day in, day out. And so I have a really, really soft spot for the technical artist that's responsible for it. If you empower them with better tools, and if you have a philosophy that is, saying, okay, 000 is 100% your true north all the way through this production. And it gives people that when they're sitting in
Yeah.
chairs and they're sweating it out in Motion Builder, or they're sweating it out in Maya, or they're sweating it out in another, graph view curve editor, they're able to make sense of what somebody who literally was a sweaty stunt guy or girl in a suit that is being directed by somebody else completely different. So it's important when you establish a lot of these tools, like, kind of best practices and really kind of how to marry those together. And it helps if you have really nerdy people around like me to kind of,
well,
so
again, you're fixing it in pre.
Yeah.
You're doing your pre-production. You're doing your site surveys,
Mhm.
figuring out where zero is,
Mhm.
and then making sure you know where zero is when you set up your gear to capture action, and then you bring it back into the
But
studio and you know where zero was.
I guess that's my question is like, has it become somewhat standardized, or is that a part of the production process where you say, by the way, here's the legend by which we say here's our scale and our coordinate system here's our reference scale and coordinate system we're working at, or do you need to be flexible, or is it generally agreed upon?
And you have to go in and like post-produce the scale and
Well, we've attached to a variety of different projects. One thing that we did for example, with Volumetric, for something that is a series on Netflix, where we actually did not produce assets that were intended for hero framing. So you're not, as close to as you are with me right now at a medium
You are
shot.
looking heroic, but
I am looking super.
you are.
It's the warehouse. It's the perspective. It's all a trick. Essentially, what we are able to do though is shoot for background and midground, and so the human eye doesn't know the difference. Doesn't know if it's an avatar. Doesn't know if it is a volumetric capture. It doesn't know. So if you're then compositing that into something that is a project that's going out in Maya or being comped in, traditionally speaking, for a more traditional pipeline, that's something we can entertain. But that's a completely different approach for finding that zero for, say, we might institute a treadmill or something like that to get a walk cycle, right? Where it's going to be loop motion, right? He's not going to go anywhere. So, we have to factor in kind of for each individual ask, what's the best way to go about it? On something like this, where we've got, 49,000 square feet of capture space, a 0 point is a very, very, very small dot on a very, very large surface.
Yeah, right.
So it's each individual ask, for example, poses a different sort of set of tasks. But luckily, all of these systems depend on calibrations, right? So you're finding true north or zero everywhere.
But so Cammy was asking. Yes, Spencer answered it in the chat. But like even if you have 0, 0, 0, there's still debate of if the middle zero is Y or Z. So
Right.
So,
Yeah,
so like
exactly. Well, and
that's what I'm
so
saying. No, YZ.
this is how I've explained it to students in the past, is that CAD is basically used to be a top-down thing.
you're looking
You
down
would look
on
at
the
everything
floor.
from you look, and so XY is always your grid reference on anything that's 2D is generally XY. And so Z is the third dimension. And so that was CAD for a long time. And then I don't know who, I think it was, what was it became Maya, but before that it was two companies. It was
Alias Wavefront.
Alias,
Soft
and then it
Homage.
was Wavefront.
And
And
Soft
I think
Homage
that
was right.
I think that Wavefront was the
Shout
first
out to
one,
Molly Cutter.
or Alias, to give you the option to have Y up, and because X and Z and Y, and I have no idea why that was chosen, but it's actually super important when you're converting CAD models. You need to make sure that you know what the what the orientation
You know how I
is.
think about it?
So anyway.
I think about it as, so in game dev, you're always thinking from the usually in a game you only have one active camera, right? And you're always thinking from the perspective of the camera, where Y is up, X is, let's just say, left, right. Let's not argue about positive or negative. And then Z is either into or away from the camera. And so if you think about it, in the CAD example, the camera is looking down at the floor from above, and X, Y, Z still represents left, right, up, down, in, out. It's just that the Y represents like relative to the floor. So,
Right.
Well, and if you want to get even more,
by the way, this is why 3D is hard.
I told you
This is why
guys.
3D
don't do
is
it.
hard.
I warned
there's
you.
left-hand rule and there's right-hand
Well,
rule.
that's the negative positive
right?
part, right?
Yeah, which direction does X face in a Y up, and which direction does Z face in a Z or no?
There's an academic answer, which you may be asked on some interviews at some game companies, and then there's the real answer, which is you keep putting negative symbols in front of numbers until things do what you think they should do.
Right.
Essentially,
Times
basically it's all
-1.
about poison, right? You pick your poison, and
if you multiply
find
times
Z
-1 enough times, it will go the direction that you expect it to go, and that is the real answer. You heard it here first.
Hey, I just want to point something out here real quick. I have been sitting here in this chair almost the entire thing.
Okay, since you brought it up,
I haven't been. I haven't really been doing a lot of this, right?
So what you did this time, which is better and appreciated, you didn't move the camera. You still moved around. I did. You still went and did things.
It's me. You know me. You got into this, knowing full well who I was.
I don't know what the technical term is for it, but
in my virtual production classes, I let kids know right away, if you're gonna move the camera, you better do it with intent.
That's right.
Purpose.
That's right.
Because otherwise, you're just going to make people sick, right?
Yeah. Actually, since we're giving out notes, Spencer, what you did well was you got up and you went, but you left the doorway framed, and so we kind of saw your movement. We kind of saw you a little bit.
You saw my sweet booty.
This is a compliment. You did well.
You did.
Much better than before.
Excellent. Well, Jimmy, dude, there's been great having
an hour 43 minutes. But
and we just got started.
Well, for part 2, for the next hour. But we had some time to make up for it. Thanks everyone for being really patient with our debugging. I don't think it was too bad actually, given that we entirely swapped out the software we're using. I don't need to plug the channel anymore. It's been up there the whole time. Watch.xrtalk.net to subscribe. If you actually, Kat Young, I actually don't even know if this little thing works on the screen at the bottom where it says new subscriber. Kat Young was our most recent subscriber. if anyone in the chat right now is not a subscriber and wanted to subscribe and try out to see if that thing actually works or if it's going to say Cat Young forever, we'd be forever in your debt. But we also have a Discord.
And actually, yeah, I actually, Eric is like, more, which is awesome. But I do have a question I wanted to ask Jimmy before the whole, all of this stuff, we went on to
now we're in the
everything
post
else.
show. Now we're in post show.
We got the hard
after
liquor,
party.
right?
After party.
Right. So, you guys have done some stuff with the Center for Disease Control, right? Like, can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, we did receive the sole source from the Center for Disease Control to do some volumetric capture in the near future. Like I said, we are an active no contact capture solution right now, and
which is rad. Yeah,
it's pretty amazing stuff that we were able to initiate some guidelines, and specifically because our facility is just built for this, and a lot of the other stages, even
you can't have the key grip inside the stage with the guy, right? Yeah.
Right. We've taken some measures. We've got some interesting spacing and solutions that just don't exist for any of the other 40 views stages, certainly in North America. And basically, we're definitely utilizing that, and we have a successful track record right now.
Okay, you're not talking about the CDC though. You're talking about the stage. So you guys doing?
You see what I did there?
Talk about it?
Spencer with the hard line.
Man.
Yeah. So CDC project work. I can't get into details about what we'll be capturing with them. But
I'm not pushing you, man. I'm interested.
Yeah, we'll be doing that in the near future. And it is because I think we've taken some early preliminary steps to ensure that there's really safety as a paramount concern of ours.
Good. Yeah. We're shooting some 360 video on the University of Oregon campus. In the near future, and we have 50 students that that are going to be in a 300-person auditorium, socially distanced, and we're going to take 360 video this whole thing, and it's like now on location shoots, you really have to like part of my whole prep is COVID-19, station. And Paul, I'm blacking out. Are you blacking us out?
Sorry.
There we go.
It's like flicking the lights on and off.
Yeah,
it's just the ugly. It's just the ugly. It's just the ugly lights coming on. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, all right. There's a lot to think about in productions.
It's true. It's true. And we scale out crews. We might have teleprompting. We might have makeup. We might have additional audio engineers. We might have multiple talent lined up. We've got a lot of things coming up in the very near future. CDC is certainly one of our most primary focused projects right now throughout 2020, but we are booked up basically pretty much through the rest of the year with additional project work.
That's great. That's so good.
They're definitely making a lot of use of this facility because it is it's set up in such a way where we can maintain that focus and offer that to companies and people that are certainly concerned about talent and obviously engineers.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we're almost
freaking mind expanding. Great.
Yeah. Have we done repeat guests yet? No, I don't think so.
Not yet.
We may have to do some repeat guests. It might be fun to do
Yeah.
multiple repeat guests. Actually, do a little forum type of thing.
Ooh, get like two or three of
Yeah,
them in
yeah,
there.
yep.
there
You know what
is
would be
a
amazing
there's an
is to get
osmosis version of me that is a brother that has equally cool things to talk about usually. And then we also have a new initiative here in Atlanta where there's four of us that have a new company that's been formed that are definitely focused on virtual production and a variety of other sort of
Oh,
solutions in
we
that
should
realm.
get a film bot on here, Jim Godeldick.
oh yes,
Yeah, so
yes,
like
yes.
he's more on the virtual production side, like using
Cool.
Unreal and game engines and live trackers to drive camera direction and post production stuff. Yeah, we definitely should probably talk about. We didn't really talk a ton about AR and VR, but like this is 3D content creation, which feeds into all of this stuff. Um,
Yeah.
it is. It is. Yeah. I mean, if anything, the way I look at it is like the same tech that drive. Like a lot of people talk about the glasses and the HMDs and the headsets. A lot of this tech that's driving that is very similar to the tech that's like creating this type of content. There's a lot of the similar challenges and cool things happening, both in computer vision and artificial intelligence. So is very relevant. Thanks so much. Like this was, real quick. Steve wanted to ask more question. Like if he was just getting, since he just got iClone, he's looking to get started. What
Okay.
what would be the resources you'd point him to for iClone and Character Creator?
Definitely be sure that you have the hub downloaded and established. And Real Illusion does a really nice job of allowing the hub to maintain your current updates for your installs. So be sure that you've got that tightened up. Also, there's a new smart gallery that's very cool. That's an additional plugin that allows you to make more sense of your content browsing experience in both Character Creator and in iClone. And it's, as you probably already know, very similar in UI layout and sort of sister feature sets, meaning that, the camera works the same way, the transform tools work the same way, these kinds of sort of, kind of options. Essentially, the other thing that I would make sure that you establish is your resource packs. That's going to give you a lot of starter content that's going to jumpstart that experience for you. So make sure you've got your resource packs for both iClone and Character Creator installed.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
And I just one more thing before we go. I want to say that there are 14 people in the chat right now, and we have 4 likes.
Thank you.
I would like to see 10 more likes, please.
Oh, I was just happy to get the 4.
Oh man, I'll take.
I was happy to not have any dislikes. Honestly,
I have 3 kids and a wife. If I can get 4
yeah,
likes,
exactly. You're in the majority. Yeah, this is super fun. By the way, chat, as always, hopefully you saw that we have now put you in the video feed because you are an important part of this show. Your questions, your curiosity, your support is so awesome. If you want to keep the conversation going between shows, you go to chat.xrtalk.net. We've got a Discord where it's quite nice. Everybody's very positive and supportive. We share cool things. We help answer questions.
Or we kick them
or
out.
we ban your ass.
Get out of here.
So that's your choices. Be nice and cool and supportive, or get out. And I think that's a totally fair set of rules. So
Absolutely.
And extra. Jimmy's been awesome, but extra special thanks for putting up with our debugging of the new streaming software and everything.
Which I think worked out well.
I think we're good. I think we're gonna stick with this. We're using Streamlabs OBS for the nerds that care on Mac, which is pretty new. One thing we learned in our testing today is that as soon as I hit the end stream button, the shit ends. So I'm gonna hit the button, and so we're gonna say goodbye to everyone right now, and then I'm gonna hit the button. All right. So thanks everybody in the chat. We'll see you in the Discord. Tweet us, subscribe, all that stuff, whatever you want to do. Thanks so much, and thanks for